Hey guys, tonight we're going to slip into the heavy fog of Victorian London, where soot clings to your overcoat like a persistent ghost, and the gas lamps flicker as if unsure whether to fully commit. You're not a chimney sweep or a pickpocket, though you'll soon envy their predictability. No, you're about to begin life as something far more questionable. A seance scheduler. Yes, that was a real thing. And yes, it's exactly as complicated as it sounds. Expect candle wax in your boots and more social politics than a Bridgerton after party. You probably won't survive this job with your dignity intact. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, post your location and the local time down in the comments. I love seeing where and when you're watching from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge through ankle-deep slush, the kind of grimy winter cocktail that only London could brew. Your breath curls in the air like a lazy ghost as you clutch a letter, heavily perfumed, faintly singed, and sealed with wax depicting a raven. The handwriting reads like it's been composed by a stressed violinist in mid-solo. You've been summoned, quite dramatically, to a townhouse in Mayfair. The brass knocker is shaped like a lion's head, which feels misleading given the whimpering sound it makes. You're met by a butler whose eyebrows could have their own postal code. He ushers you into a drawing room where velvet drapes swallow the light and every surface seems to hold either a porcelain doll or something taxidermied. Here she is, Widow Percival Montague, lace-clad, veil-shrouded, and disturbingly still, until she speaks, and it's clear she's rehearsed every syllable for theatrical impact. She wants to speak to her late husband who died under peculiar circumstances involving a duck, a ladder, and a misplaced lorgnette. You resist the urge to ask questions. And so it begins. You're not a medium. God, no, that involves actual risk of haunting. You're the scheduler, the logistics wrangler. You maintain the balance between the bereaved and the opportunistically spooky. You line up dates, venues, and keep track of which clients demand post-séance sherry. It's spreadsheets without the spread, or the sheet, really. Just a massive tea-stained leather ledger with notes like 2 candles, 1 grief-stricken aunt, no mirrors. As the séance begins, you stand awkwardly by the drapes, pretending not to eavesdrop. Madame Rosina, your medium for the evening, moans into the ether, palms twitching like she's playing an invisible accordion. Widow Percival Montague gasps when the table trembles. You know it's just Rosina's left foot planted firmly against the leg. Still, you make a note. This client is a leaner, likes her ghosts interactive. The séance wraps up without anyone fainting, vomiting, or confessing to a murder. A success by Victorian standards. Widow PM slips you an envelope with a crisp note and a lock of hair, hopefully her own. You walk home under flickering gaslight. The street smells like burning cabbage and ambition. A dog barks in Morse code. Somewhere, someone is playing the accordion badly. You pull your scarf tighter. You're in this now. Your humble lodgings above a printmaker's shop are sparsely furnished, though you've somehow inherited both a fainting couch and an oil painting of a disgruntled bishop. Your landlady insists he once cursed the wallpaper. You believe her. The wallpaper seems to peel when it disapproves. You sit with your feet up, reviewing tomorrow's schedule. 3 séances. 1 for a naval widow who insists on singing sea shanties to summon her late husband. 1 for a baron who is convinced his estate is haunted by a ghost horse. And 1 for a spinster who just misses conversation. You're triple booked with nonsense. This is your life now, a steady parade of grief, gullibility, and elaborate embroidery. But somewhere amid the candlelight and cranberry scones, you found a calling. You're the invisible hand that keeps the spiritual gears turning. Mainstream historians often focus on the mediums and mystics, but seance schedulers like you were the backstage crew of the Victorian supernatural scene. Without you, there'd be no ghostly messages, no candlelit whispers, just chaos, confusion, and probably someone trying to communicate with their dead hamster using a breadstick. The spiritualist movement is booming, especially after the 1848 Fox Sisters episode in upstate New York, where two young girls claimed to communicate with spirits through rapping sounds. The trend crossed the Atlantic like a fashionably melancholy wave. Historians still argue whether this mass belief was driven more by grief or boredom, perhaps a bit of both. But tonight, your fingers smell faintly of paraffin wax, your boots are drying near the stove, and you've just scribbled, "Do not double book Lord Wigsbury" in your ledger for the third time this month. The city settles into night as you blow out your lamp. You lie down on the lumpy mattress, wondering if the bishop in the painting ever found. You wake to the sound of something thumping repeatedly against your door. It's not a ghost, probably. It's just the morning delivery boy with a fresh sack of letters, a copy of the Illustrated London News, and a sticky bun he insists was meant for someone else. You take it anyway. As you chew the questionable pastry, you scan the day's correspondence. 3 requests for seance appointments. 1 angry note about a disrespectful curtain draft during last Thursday's event. And a final envelope, black bordered and perfumed like a funeral had a baby with a flower shop. You sigh. It's from Lady Effingham Woolsey again. You haven't even had tea yet. Your morning routine is meticulous. First, a kettle whistling just shy of shrill. Then, a carefully measured scoop of loose leaves, Darjeeling for its subtle ability to calm the nerves or at least delay their collapse. You light 2 tapers on the mantel, not for ambience, but because the gas lamp hisses ominously when provoked. As you sip, your eyes drift to the parrot. Yes, the parrot. Taxidermied, glass-eyed, and very much not alive. You didn't buy it. It came with the room. Its name is Algernon, and you've developed the unpleasant habit of talking to him over breakfast. "So," you mutter through toast crumbs, "another double seance today, Algie? Think we'll make it through without someone trying to summon Queen Elizabeth once again?" Algernon stares blankly, judgment heavy. You consider moving him to the coat rack. You don't. The first session is at a modest home in Bloomsbury, hosted by a woman who insists on calling her drawing room the spirit parlor. You arrive 5 minutes early and are instantly lectured on the psychic significance of punctuality. The medium today is Miss Dottie Clemens, 18, perpetually wide-eyed, and a self-proclaimed clairvoyant trance conduit. You suspect she's also part-time florist, full-time drama student. She greets you wearing 7 bangles and a look of practiced serenity. You set up the space while she swirls around lighting incense and muttering phrases like, "Cleanse the astral doorway," and "Don't touch the crystal swan." The client is a rotund gentleman who says he's here for closure, but also asks 3 times if spirits can predict racehorses. You make a note. Might confuse grief with gambling. Dottie channels what she claims is the ghost of his grandmother. The air is thick with sandalwood and the sound of stifled sobbing. You can't tell if it's emotion or incense-induced eye irritation. Either way, The gentleman leaves satisfied, his pockets lighter and his eyes red. Next stop, Lady Effingham Woolsey's townhome, where she insists on serving cucumber sandwiches as if they contain meaningful nutrients. You sit, dutifully nibbling the corners, while she prattles on about the vibrations and the superiority of walnut wood for spirit contact. Today's guest medium is Madame Vestre, a theatrical Frenchwoman whose accent conveniently thickens when tips are being discussed. She refuses to start until the room's temperature is exactly 63 degrees Fahrenheit. You check the thermometer, 61. You wait. When it's finally spirit time, Lady Effingham Woolsey demands communication with her deceased schnauzer, Percival. Madame Vestre moans dramatically. The table tilts once, twice, and then settles. A faint yipping sound, possibly the maid sneezing, elicits gasps. Lady Effingham Woolsey sobs, declaring it unmistakably Percy's bark. You make another note. Client emotionally volatile, likely to tip in shillings and tears. Victorians, as you've come to learn, are not merely obsessed with the dead. They're in competition over them. Who's contacted more spirits? Whose séance featured a floating handkerchief? Whose medium fainted most convincingly? It's less spiritualism, more performative grief, a sort of macabre dinner theater. Mainstream historians often attribute the boom in spiritualism to the high mortality rates of the era. Cholera, typhoid, childbirth, railway accidents. But fringe scholars suggest a quieter factor. Loneliness. The kind only cured by hearing someone or something call your name in a voice you once loved. You return home exhausted, clutching your now flowery coat and half a cucumber sandwich. Algernon is waiting, still judging. You update your ledger, which has become both record and confessional. A quick scan shows Thursday is now triple booked, and you've accidentally written crumpet instead of trumpet in the notes for a spiritual demonstration. You sigh. Hopefully no one brings baked goods expecting ghostly brass instruments. As the sun sets behind chimney stacks, you light the fire and toss in a flyer from a competing séance planner. It's garish and golden, featuring a Dr. Ignatius Blevins spirit facilitator to the stars. He claims to have channeled Napoleon 3 times. You suspect he's a fraud, but a stylish one. The fire crackles. Somewhere outside, a cat yowls in discontent or romance. It's often hard to tell. You sink into your armchair, every joint quietly protesting the day's labor. Historians still argue whether mediums truly believed in their work or simply mastered the art of emotional manipulation. You're inclined to think it's both. Belief is a powerful thing. So is the ability to pocket a sixpence while pretending to tremble. As you drift off, you think about that yipping bark, the gentleman with racehorse questions, and the ever-skeptical stare of a glass-eyed parrot. This life you've built is absurd, yes, but oddly dignified. There's comfort in schedules, even those haunted by the dearly departed. You snuff out the final candle. Darkness falls like a curtain. Tomorrow, the show begins. You wake to the faint clang of a milk cart and the unmistakable feeling that you're already late for something. Probably true. You stretch your arms toward a ceiling that's seen better plasterwork and shuffle to the desk where your leather-bound ledger waits, looming really, like an overachieving ghoul. Today's first entry reads, Lady Churtwell, 10:30 a.m. sharp. Request trumpet and no more funny business. That last part is underlined twice. You pour yourself a cup of aggressively tannic tea and sigh. Lady Churtwell has never laughed, not once, not even when the spirit bell hit her squarely in the face last spring. Your journey takes you through the more fashionable streets of Kensington, past gas lamps and grocers with oranges stacked in architectural defiance. Your boots squelch with a pleasing rhythmic consistency. Left, right, splash, curse, repeat. You arrive precisely at 10:27, which for Lady Churtwell might as well be a war crime. Her footman opens the door with the resigned air of a man who's seen too many seances and not enough vacation days. Inside, the room is already arranged with clinical precision. 3 chairs form a triangle around a small round table draped in starched lace. At the center, a spirit trumpet, polished, upright, and, you suspect, deeply unloved. Lady Churtwell appears in a gown that looks upholstered rather than tailored. "You're 2 minutes and 49 seconds late," she intones. "I do apologize. There was a spiritual obstruction. Quite slippery." She doesn't blink. Today's medium is Mr. Thaddeus Finch, a tall, reedy man with hair like startled wheat and a fondness for quoting Keats mid-possession. He greets you with a faint bow and produces a small vial of what he claims is spirit perfume. You've smelled it before. It's mostly gin and lavender, but no one complains. Lady Churtwell settles in, adjusting her gloves with the precision of someone who once threatened a maid over uneven napkin folds. Thaddeus begins humming, softly at first, then louder, until it resembles a Gregorian chant delivered by a tipsy choir boy. The trumpet rattles. A cool draft snakes through the room. Lady Churtwell gasps. The séance proceeds without incident, save for a moment when the trumpet emits a sound uncannily like a sneeze. Thaddeus insists it was a minor Baroque spirit. You pretend not to hear Lady Churtwell mutter something about utter poppycock. And yet, as she signs your logbook with a silver pen shaped like a lily, she presses a shilling into your palm. A tip. Miracles do happen. You're halfway through your day, sipping lukewarm tea from a flask that used to smell faintly of peppermint, but now just smells like regret, when your second appointment sends a messenger to cancel. Apparently, the client was overcome by soup. You don't ask for clarification. You never do. Victorian digestion is a mystery best left unexplored. This gives you time for an unscheduled visit to a tea room in Covent Garden, where the cakes are suspiciously moist and the conversations are so hushed they might as well be lip-read. You sit by the window, watching horse-drawn cabs splash past while scribbling notes in the margin of your ledger. Possible new clients. Mrs. Penwhistle weeps for no reason. The Hahn, Bartholomew, may be in love with Ghost. Reverend Crisp believes in haunted cheese. Victorian society has fully embraced the séance as both event and status symbol. A properly executed spiritual gathering now ranks just below an opera box and just above owning a parlor fern. What began as clandestine mourning has morphed into high society entertainment. Historians still argue whether this shift diluted the belief system or gave it permanence. You lean back and let your eyes rest, only to be interrupted by someone plopping into the seat opposite you. It's Clarissa Meeks, a fellow scheduler, partial rival, and woman with a hat so wide it might qualify as small housing. "I hear you had a trumpet incident this morning," she says without greeting. Rumors travel faster than ghosts these days. She laughs, picks at your scone, and waves off your glare. "I'm headed to a séance tonight for the Duchess of Flintersby. She wants to contact her 4th husband, or maybe her 5th. They start to blur, don't they?" You do not say aloud what you're thinking, which is, Clarissa's schedule is getting busier than yours. Instead, you smile too tightly. After she leaves, You sit with your empty plate and a sinking feeling that rivals are rising faster than your appointment fees. It's time to re-strategize. Maybe you need a gimmick. Trumpets are passé, spirit slates, phantom opera glasses, an ectoplasm taster sampler. As evening closes in, your final appointment leads you to a genteel townhouse tucked behind a failing haberdashery. The client, a Miss Eloise Bramley, is young, anxious, and insists on dimming the gas lights to preserve the ectoplasmic resonance. You don't argue. You never argue with someone who offers both shortbread and inherited trauma. Your medium is old Miss Prindle, who wears lace gloves at all times and claims her spirit guide is a 12th century monk named Gregor who enjoys limericks. Tonight, Gregor recites one about a haunted cow. You make a note. Client found the cow poetic. Potential repeat customer. It's a good ending to a strange day. As you walk home, the cobblestones glisten in the lamplight and the fog settles like a borrowed blanket. The city breathes in long, soot-laced sighs. Somewhere behind you, a church bell rings 13 times. You don't look back. You never do. You reach your flat, pull off your damp boots, and fall into your armchair where Algernon awaits. You glance at him. Well, you whisper, at least no one tried to marry a ghost today. He looks unconvinced. You close your eyes, and for a brief moment, the only sound is the soft ticking of the mantel clock and the faintest, most exhausted whisper of your own breath. Sleep comes quickly when you're this kind of tired, the kind that curls into your bones and rearranges your dreams into ledgers and lakes. The morning air is sharper than usual, cutting through your coat collar like a gossip's whisper. You step outside your lodgings and the usual sounds of London's waking bustle greet you. Horse hooves clattering on wet cobblestones, the wheeze of a distant steam engine, and somewhere nearby, a cat hissing at a particularly aggressive pigeon. You watch a vendor setting up his cart, selling newspaper bundles wrapped in twine, each headline screaming about the latest railway accident or another political scandal nobody really understands, but everyone pretends to care about. You realize you're late again, which is your new normal. The ledger at home waits patiently for you like a stern schoolmaster, but today your mind is elsewhere, on a letter you found tucked beneath your door the night before. No signature, just a request for a séance at the infamous Holloway Asylum. You don't even want to say the word out loud. Lunatic asylums aren't the usual haunt of your clients. The letter is oddly specific, demanding strict discretion and an expert medium. You're not sure who sent it, but it reeks of desperation and perhaps something darker. You pull your coat tighter, wondering if scheduling séances for grieving widows in well-appointed drawing rooms is about to become a lot less genteel. Arriving at Holloway, the imposing red brick facade looms overhead, windows barred and peering like watchful eyes. You're greeted by a nurse who looks as if she's seen the afterlife and come back less impressed. She ushers you inside, where the stale smell of antiseptic mingles awkwardly with faint hints of lavender and something metallic. You follow her through winding corridors where faded wallpaper peels like old skin and portraits of stern-faced men glare down from the walls. The room for the séance is a small parlor lined with cracked leather chairs and dim gaslight flickering from a single chandelier. Your client today is Mrs. Wren, a pale woman whose fingers clutch a locket so tightly her knuckles whiten. She says her husband was admitted here 6 months ago following an unfortunate incident involving a stolen pocket watch and a particularly irritable goat. You resist the urge to ask for details. Your medium, Miss Isabel Crane, is younger and quieter than usual. She moves slowly, almost reluctantly, and seems less eager to channel spirits tonight. Maybe it's the setting. Maybe it's the stories that linger in the shadows. You notice the atmosphere thickens when Isabel begins her invocation. The room grows cold, colder than any gas lamp could explain. Shadows stretch and twitch as if trying to escape their frames. Mrs. Wren gasps and clutches her locket tighter. Suddenly, a knock. Not at the door, on the window. You freeze. Isabel doesn't miss a beat. She intones the spirit's name, a faint trembling whisper of Edward, and the séance resumes. The table vibrates slightly, or maybe it's just your heart pounding. You try not to look at the window again. Afterward, Mrs. Wren thanks you with trembling lips and presses a folded note into your hand, an invitation to return when the veil is thinnest. You tuck it away carefully. You leave Holloway feeling unmoored, the city's familiar fog swallowing you whole. The faces on the street seem sharper, more haunted. You wonder if you're starting to see things, or if London itself is beginning to whisper secrets you're only just learning to hear. Victorian society's relationship with mental health is complicated at best. Asylums like Holloway were both places of treatment and containment, often rife with cruelty hidden beneath official decorum. Some spiritualists believe the souls of the mentally ill were especially close to the other side, making seances in such places potent or perilous. Historians still argue whether seances conducted in asylums were acts of compassion or exploitation. Back in your flat, you attempt to shake the unease clinging to your skin. Algernon, the silent parrot, watches you with the same unblinking gaze, as if judging not just your scheduling skills, but your very soul. You sit, tired but alert, realizing this job is pulling you into places darker and more complex than mere grief or curiosity. You are becoming part of a web, woven from sorrow, belief, and the desperate hope that some words can cross the divide between life and death. You tuck the mysterious note beside your ledger and pour yourself another cup of tea, bracing for whatever ghostly appointment awaits next. You wake with a start, tangled in a dream where the walls of your room ripple like water, and Algernon's glassy eyes seem to flicker with life. You blink it away, but the feeling lingers, like an unfinished conversation. Your schedule for the day is unusually sparse, a blessing, you tell yourself, but also a little suspicious. Perhaps the city itself is holding its breath. Before breakfast, you receive a telegram. The ink is smudged, the handwriting hurried, but the message is clear. Urgent. The Great Exhibition Society requests your presence for a special demonstration. Midnight. Crystal Palace. The Great Exhibition. The grand showcase of wonders, technology, and curiosities. The Crystal Palace, a glass and iron marvel shimmering like a jewel on the Thames. It's where the world's marvels meet, and tonight, apparently, so will your seances. Midnight is an ungodly hour, but you know refusals don't bode well for future commissions. You dress in your best, well, your cleanest, and make your way through fogged streets, the gas lamps casting dancing shadows. Upon arrival, the Crystal Palace is a glowing hive of activity. Scientists argue with artists, inventors demonstrate impossible machines, exotic animals pace in glass cages, and somewhere nearby a phonograph crackles with a tinny melody. You're escorted to a raised platform draped in deep velvet, where a small audience, eager, skeptical, wide-eyed, and a few visibly bored, awaits the start of the event. The society's president, a booming man with a monocle and a waistcoat heavy with medals, introduces you as the premier scheduler of spiritual interludes. Your medium tonight is Madame Delacroix, a Parisian whose stage presence is as commanding as her rumored ability to summon the voices of lost civilizations. She's dressed in black silk and sequins, her eyes glittering with something fierce. The séance begins with theatrical flair. Madame Delacroix lights candles in a precise pattern, sings an otherworldly chant, and summons a spirit she claims is the ghost of a recently deceased engineer who died inventing a perpetual motion machine. The audience murmurs, some fascinated, some snickering. Then the room grows cold. The spirit trumpet twitches. A voice whispers, "Impossible is only a word." The crowd leans in. You catch a glimpse of the Duke of Marlborough smirking in the front row, his skepticism thinly veiled by a stiff upper lip. Midway through, something unexpected happens. The glass of the crystal candelabra shatters with a sharp crack. A collective gasp rises. Madame Delacroix falters, eyes wide. You quickly calm the crowd, attributing it to the unpredictable energy summoned tonight. You can't help but wonder if it was something else, a genuine spectral hiccup, or just the shoddy glassware. Historians still argue whether such public seances were elaborate theatrical spectacles or sincere attempts at spirit contact. After the event, several attendees approach you, some impressed, others openly doubtful. One gentleman, a professor of natural philosophy, challenges you on the scientific merits of spiritualism. You smile and hand him a business card. You've learned the best response is silence, or an offer to schedule a private séance. As the night winds down, you stroll through the glowing halls of the Crystal Palace, the shards of broken glass sparkling like stars on the floor. Outside, the Thames reflects the city's restless light, and you feel a strange kinship with the shadows that gather beneath the iron arches. Returning home, you record the night's events in your ledger, noting Madame Delacroix's flair and the unexplained glass breakage. You pause, wondering if this job is less about organizing events and more about managing belief itself, a delicate dance between skepticism and hope. You blow out your candles and settle into bed, the faint echo of whispered voices lingering as you drift into sleep. You wake slowly to the scent of damp earth and coal smoke drifting through the cracked window pane. Outside, the city is stirring with the uneven rhythm of carriages, market cries, and the distant clang of a blacksmith hammering steel. You pull your shawl tighter, considering the day ahead, especially since it involves the notorious Miss Agatha Blunt, a client with a penchant for dramatic flair and an unshakable belief in messages from beyond the beyond. Miss Blunt's house is perched on the edge of Hampstead Heath, a rambling Gothic affair with turrets that look like they might sprout wings. The interior smells faintly of lavender and old paper, and there's a curious chill that lingers long after you've shut the front door. You're greeted by Miss Blunt herself, a woman whose eyes sparkle with a mix of curiosity and impatience. Her fingers tap a rhythm on the mahogany table, each beat echoing like a small drum. Today's séance will be no ordinary affair. Miss Blunt has invited a small group of local enthusiasts, her spiritualist circle, who gather weekly to share stories, practice mediumship, and occasionally burst into tears over Victorian melodrama. You recognize a few faces, including Mr. Tibbins, who once claimed to have spoken to the ghost of Napoleon's valet, and Mrs. Everhart, who insists on bringing her own ectoplasm detector, an elaborate contraption of wires, bells, and blinking lights that looks like a steampunk relic. The séance begins with a round of introductions and a brief lecture from Miss Blunt about the proper alignment of energies. You listen, amused, as she speaks of astral planes and etheric vibrations with the seriousness of a scientist unveiling a new element. You take your seat near the spirit trumpet, ready to log the proceedings with your usual blend of skepticism and professionalism. As the chanting starts, the room's atmosphere thickens, and you notice the subtle flicker of candle flames dancing in time with the voices. Then, unexpectedly, the ectoplasm detector on Mrs. Everhart's lap starts to clang loudly, lights flashing erratically. She gasps and clutches the device as if it might explode. The group falls silent. Miss Blunt's eyes widen, but she quickly recovers, suggesting the spirit world is making its presence undeniably clear. You can't help but wonder if the contraption is merely malfunctioning, but you keep this thought to yourself. After all, everyone here wants to believe. The séance continues with whispered names, faint knocks on the walls, and the trumpet gently vibrating. Miss Blunt interprets each sign with dramatic flair, occasionally pausing to wipe a tear or smile knowingly. When the session ends, the group lingers, exchanging excited murmurs and promising to meet again. You pack your ledger carefully, noting the unusual activity and the enthusiastic, if possibly deluded, participants. On your way out, you pause to admire the view of Hampstead Heath bathed in late afternoon light, a serene, timeless landscape that seems worlds away from the clamor of London. You realize that while some seances offer clear closure or comfort, others thrive on the collective yearning for connection and the thrill of the unknown. Historians still argue whether these spiritualist circles were genuine attempts at contacting the dead or early social clubs wrapped in mystery and spectacle. Back in your flat, you prepare a simple supper, your thoughts wandering between the tangible and intangible, the soot-streaked streets and the whispered promises of spirits. Algernon squawks a little, reminding you that even in the quietest moments, life and perhaps death keeps its own rhythm. Word count? You awaken to the dull ache of a London fog pressing against your window, muffling the sounds of the city. The streets are slick and shimmering, reflections of gas lamps dancing in puddles like reluctant phantoms. Today, your itinerary includes a rare appointment with a gentleman client, Sir Reginald Harcourt, a retired naval officer reputed for his skepticism and his surprisingly lavish taste in seances. Sir Reginald's townhouse stands resolute amidst a row of brownstones, its stone facade weathered by years of salt and wind. The moment you step inside, the scent of pipe tobacco and aged oak surrounds you, a comforting reminder that some things remain steadfast despite the city's restless energy. The parlor is a study in Victorian masculinity, heavy curtains, brass fixtures, and a collection of naval charts pinned meticulously to the walls. Sir Reginald himself is seated by the fireplace, his expression a curious blend of impatience and intrigue. He shakes your hand firmly, eyes piercing beneath a brow furrowed from decades at sea. This, he says, gesturing to the circle of chairs around the table, is my first and only dalliance with the occult. Don't disappoint. Your medium today is Madame Seraphine, a woman known for her dramatic flair and unsettling ability to channel voices that sound suspiciously like her own. She moves gracefully as she arranges crystals and candles on the table, casting glances that suggest she knows secrets no one else does. The séance begins with a solemn invocation. Madame Seraphine's voice dips and rises in an otherworldly melody, the candles flickering as if caught in an unseen breeze. The room temperature dips noticeably. You suppress a shiver. Sir Reginald watches intently, arms crossed, skeptical but willing to entertain the possibility. The spirit trumpet quivers lightly, then emits a faint tapping, a Morse code of the ethereal. Madame Seraphine listens, then translates. The sea claims all who wander. Sir Reginald's eyes narrow. Cryptic, if poetic, he mutters. Midway through, the session is interrupted by a sudden gust that blows out the candles, plunging the room into near darkness. For a moment, only the scratch of the spirit trumpet and a soft whisper fill the space. Then the candles relight themselves, one by one. You blink, a trick of the gaslight surely, or something more. Historians still argue whether such manifestations were staged theatrics or genuine phenomena. As the séance closes, Sir Reginald rises and offers you a rare smile. Well done, he says. I remain unconvinced but entertained. You pack up your things, the old man's skepticism lingering like the smell of tobacco smoke. Outside, the fog has thickened, swallowing the gas lamps whole. Walking home, you contemplate the curious intersection of belief and doubt that defines your work. Your ledger now holds stories of faith, skepticism, and the ever-thinning veil between worlds. Algernon greets you with a tired squawk, as if to say, another day, another ghost. You settle into your chair, knowing that tomorrow will bring new mysteries, and, of course, more schedules to keep. The dawn arrives with a drizzle, the kind that seeps into your bones and makes the city seem even grayer than usual. You pull your coat tighter and clutch your umbrella, stepping out into the damp streets toward your next appointment, this one unlike any you've ever taken. A letter sealed with crimson wax invited you to the private residence of Lady Beatrice Marlowe, a woman of impeccable pedigree and an equally impeccable reputation for hosting exclusive séances for London's elite. The invitation hinted at something rare, a séance conducted in complete silence, relying solely on the participants' inner senses. Arriving at Lady Marlowe's townhouse, you notice the subtle elegance of the place, the delicate fragrance of jasmine in the air, the soft murmur of classical music faintly audible through heavy drapes. Lady Marlowe greets you with a serene smile and a nod, her eyes gleaming with calm confidence. The parlor is arranged with an unusual minimalism. No candles, no spirit trumpets, no ectoplasm detectors. Instead, the circle of chairs faces inward, and the room is bathed in gentle daylight filtering through stained glass. The guests arrive, men and women draped in mourning black, faces serene yet expectant. Lady Marlowe instructs everyone to close their eyes and focus on listening to the silence where spirits whisper. The séance unfolds not with clatters or whispers, but with long pauses and shared breaths. You find yourself hyper-aware of the soft creaks of the floorboards, the distant chime of a clock, the collective heartbeat of the group. Minutes stretch like hours. You try to quiet your mind, but the silence seems charged, almost alive. Suddenly, a faint scent of lavender drifts across the room, a smell no one has introduced. Lady Marlowe's lips part slightly. Others sniff the air, a shared shiver passing through the circle. You make a mental note. Victorian fascination with scents and spiritual practices was common. Some believed certain aromas could attract or repel spirits. Historians still argue whether such sensory rituals were spiritual essentials or mere superstition. As the session draws to a close, Lady Marlowe speaks softly about the power of stillness to connect worlds, and thanks everyone for their courage and openness. You jot down your observations, noting the profound effect silence can have on the imagination, how absence of sound can amplify the unseen. Walking home afterward, you reflect on the contrast between this séance and the chaotic spectacle at the Crystal Palace. Here, the unseen was summoned through quiet contemplation rather than flamboyant ritual. Back in your flat, Algernon preens himself atop his perch, unfazed by your musings. You pour a cup of chamomile tea, the warmth grounding you after the day's ethereal journey. You wonder how many other secret methods of spirit communication await discovery, silent, scented, subtle, and you're ready to schedule them all. Word count 1009 you, awaiting continue. You rise to the steady tapping of rain against your window pane, the sky a uniform slate. The city smells of wet stone and horse sweat, a familiar, stubborn aroma that sticks to your boots as you step into the street. Today's appointment takes you far from the usual gaslit rooms and drawing rooms, all the way to a modest tenement in East London, where the humbler folk gather to seek connection beyond the tangible. Mrs. O'Leary, your client, is a widow with thick, tangled hair and eyes that hold storms. She's lost more than one family member to the harsh city life, and her home smells of coal smoke and boiled cabbage. The séance you're called to schedule is more grassroots than grand affair, a gathering in a cramped, crowded room where neighbors hold hands and voices tremble between hope and despair. The space is cramped but alive, warmed by the heat of many bodies packed close against a persistent chill. The circle forms not around a polished table, but a patched blanket spread over creaking floorboards. No fancy spirit trumpets or ectoplasm detectors here, just raw human need. As the séance begins, you notice the way hands grasp tighter and how the low murmur of prayers and chants fills the room. The medium, a wiry woman named Maggie, calls on spirits of ancestors and lost friends with a voice that cracks like old leather. The light flickers from a single kerosene lamp, casting dancing shadows that seem to merge with the gathered faces. At one point, a neighbor swears he felt a cold hand brush his cheek. Others say the air thickened as if someone unseen had entered the room. You scribble notes, aware that this séance is less performance and more survival, an act of communal comfort in a world too often indifferent. You think of the stark contrast between this gathering and the Crystal Palace spectacle. Here, belief isn't dressed up in velvet or gaslight. It's raw, immediate, and deeply necessary. Historians still argue whether these grassroots seances were simple superstition or essential social rituals that help the working class endure loss. As the night deepens and the group slowly disperses, you linger, sensing the quiet resilience that underpins this fragile hope. You walk home through streets slick with rain, the city's lights shimmering like blurred ghosts. Algernon greets you with a tired squawk, as if acknowledging the night's weight. You settle at your desk, feeling the pulse of many worlds, both seen and unseen, throughout London's restless heart. The morning light filters weakly through your curtains, a pale wash over your cluttered desk where your ledger lies open, filled with scribbles and notes from countless séances past. Today, you prepare for a different kind of job, one arranged by a mysterious gentleman known only as Mr. Whitlock, who insists on absolute discretion and secrecy. His request is unusual, a séance not for entertainment or solace, but for information, an attempt to reach the spirit of a recently deceased banker rumored to have hidden a fortune in scandalous dealings. The séance will be held in a private library filled with leather-bound volumes and the faint scent of polished mahogany. You arrive just as twilight settles, casting long shadows across rows of books. Mr. Whitlock is a tall, gaunt man whose eyes gleam with intensity, his fingers drumming nervously on the tabletop. The medium, a young woman named Eliza, appears delicate but fierce. She places a circle of salt around the table, a protective barrier, she explains, used to ward off malicious spirits. You remember reading that such protective rituals were a Victorian spiritualist staple, though historians still debate how seriously participants took these precautions versus their theatrical value. The séance begins with a strict tone. There's little of the usual flourish. Instead, Eliza's voice is steady, calm. The group waits in silence, listening for any sign. Suddenly, a book falls from a high shelf with a sharp thud. Eyes widen. Mr. Whitlock's hands clench the edge of the table. Eliza channels a voice speaking in riddles about hidden ledgers beneath the floorboards. The group quickly moves to inspect the room, uncovering a loose floorboard near the fireplace. Beneath it, a small, dust-covered box holds papers, evidence of embezzlement and long-forgotten debts. You can't decide if the spirits truly guided the search or if Mr. Whitlock had an inside tip. Historians still argue whether such spirit communications were genuine or cleverly orchestrated. After the discovery, Mr. Whitlock thanks you solemnly and slips away into the fog, leaving you with a strange mixture of satisfaction and unease. Walking home through the misted streets, you wonder how many secrets London hides beneath its surface, and how many are whispered only to those who listen closely. Back in your flat, Algernon stares at you knowingly, as if to say, some mysteries are better left untouched. But you know better. Tomorrow will bring new schedules, new stories, and you're ready to keep listening. The morning air is crisp and carries the faint scent of spring blossoms, a welcome change from the usual soot and smoke. You stroll toward your next engagement, the rhythmic clatter of hooves on cobblestones accompanying your thoughts. Today's client is a well-known writer, Miss Eleanor Wren, whose fascination with the supernatural has fueled many a best-selling novel, and whose seances are as much about inspiration as communication. Miss Wren's study is a cozy, book-lined refuge with a large bay window overlooking a small garden where daffodils nod in the breeze. The room is fragrant with bergamot and old paper. She greets you warmly, eyes bright with expectation and a touch of nervousness. Her medium, Mr. Hawthorne, is a reserved man with a slight stammer, known more for his scholarly knowledge of occult literature than dramatic manifestations. His approach is methodical, almost clinical, using an array of tarot cards, pendulums, and ancient texts to guide the session. The séance is meant to connect with the spirit of a long-dead poet, Miss Wren's personal hero, whose verses she hopes to channel anew. The ritual begins with readings from the poet's collected works, setting a tone of reverence. Mr. Hawthorne's voice softens as he calls forth the spirit, his eyes closed in concentration. As the circle forms, a sudden gust sweeps through the room, rustling pages and causing the pendulum to swing wildly. Miss Wren gasps, and you notice a faint scent of violets, the poet's favorite flower, according to legend. The pendulum spells out a cryptic message. Seek the words unwritten. You jot down the phrase, pondering its meaning. Historians still debate whether Victorian seances often doubled as creative exercises or genuine spiritual communications. The session ends with Miss Wren reading a new poem, inspired, she claims, by the session itself, a blend of memory, imagination, and perhaps something beyond. You leave the study with a sense of wonder at how belief and creativity intertwine, each feeding the other in delicate balance. Outside, the city hums with life. Algernon squawks softly from your bag, a reminder that the line between the seen and unseen is often as thin as a whispered verse. A thick blanket of fog clings to the city as you make your way to a lesser-known location, the back room of a bustling East End pub, where a group of dock workers gather weekly to escape the harshness of their lives. This séance is far from the elegant parlors and dusty libraries you're accustomed to. It's raw, gritty, and steeped in the unvarnished realities of working-class London. The room smells of stale ale, sweat, and tobacco smoke. The table around which the men sit is scarred and stained, evidence of many a night spent in earnest conversation and raucous laughter. Their medium, a burly man named Tom, has hands calloused from years at sea and a voice that carries the kind of authority earned through survival. Tonight's séance is a tribute to lost mates, fishermen swallowed by the unforgiving Thames, sailors claimed by distant storms. The men clasp hands, their faces grim but hopeful. As Tom calls out names and stories, the room seems to grow colder. The flickering candlelight casts long, wavering shadows. One of the men swears he felt a hand on his shoulder, a comforting grip, fleeting but real. You note the significance. Such seances often served as communal grieving rituals, blending superstition with the human need to remember and honor. Historians still debate whether these gatherings were primarily spiritual or psychological lifelines. The session is punctuated by hearty toasts and murmured prayers, blending reverence with the rough camaraderie of the dockside. When the night ends, the men linger, sharing stories and clapping each other's backs, a brotherhood strengthened by shared loss and belief. Walking back through the foggy streets, you reflect on how different social classes approach death and the afterlife, not with the same rituals, but with equally profound needs. Algernon preens on his perch, unbothered by the grime and grit of the evening. You realize your work is more than scheduling séances. It's documenting the many ways humans confront mystery and mortality. You awaken to the soft hum of rain tapping on your window, a gentle symphony that blends with the distant clatter of horse-drawn carts. Today's task takes you to the home of Dr. Felix Pembroke, a man whose fascination with spiritualism is tempered by a rigorous scientific mind. Dr. Pembroke's study is a stark contrast to the ornate parlors you've grown used to. It's lined with test tubes, measuring instruments, and stacks of papers filled with meticulous notes. The scent of ink and chemical solvents hangs in the air, and the flicker of a gas lamp casts sharp shadows on the walls. Pembroke has invited you to schedule a séance designed as an experiment, an attempt to capture spiritual phenomena under controlled conditions. The medium is a quiet woman named Clarissa, whose calm demeanor contrasts with the clinical atmosphere. She explains the use of newly invented devices, including a spirit photography camera, which she hopes will capture ghostly images. As the séance commences, you notice the subtle interplay between scientific observation and spiritual belief. Clarissa calls on spirits with measured words, while Dr. Pembroke records temperature changes, air pressure, and other variables. Suddenly, the camera flashes, revealing a faint, misty figure on the developed plate, though skeptics might argue it's merely a trick of light or a double exposure. Historians still debate whether these early attempts at scientific spiritualism were genuine investigations or elaborate hoaxes. The session ends with no definitive answers, but plenty of questions and a renewed sense of wonder. You leave the house pondering the delicate dance between faith and reason that defines so much of Victorian life. Back home, Algernon preens, unfazed by your philosophical musings. You sip your tea, knowing tomorrow's schedule will bring yet another chapter in this curious ongoing story. The city greets you with an early morning chill, the kind that seeps beneath even the thickest coats. Today's appointment is perhaps the most peculiar yet, a séance held not in a lavish parlor or shadowy pub, but aboard the Spirit of the Thames, a modest riverboat moored along the foggy banks. The boat creaks softly as you climb aboard, the scent of damp wood and river water mingling with the faint trace of lavender oil. The passengers, an eclectic mix of spiritualists, curious travelers, and local enthusiasts, gather in the main cabin, which is lit by flickering lanterns and adorned with faded tapestries depicting ethereal scenes. The medium, a charismatic man known as Jasper Crowley, commands attention with his booming voice and dramatic gestures. His performances are famed for combining theatrical flair with genuine spiritual inquiry, a blend that has sparked both admiration and skepticism. Tonight's séance focuses on contacting spirits lost to the river, a tribute to sailors, fishermen, and those claimed by the treacherous currents. Jasper's calls echo through the cabin, the wooden walls seeming to breathe with the echoes of the past. As he channels, a sudden chill sweeps through the room, causing lantern flames to flicker wildly. A ripple of murmurs runs through the crowd. Jasper claims to hear a voice warning of danger beneath the waves. You note the powerful symbolism of water in Victorian spiritualism, often seen as a bridge between life and death. Historians still debate how much of this symbolism was rooted in genuine belief versus romanticized tragedy. The session concludes with a solemn moment of silence, the boat gently rocking as the river flows beneath. You disembark into the damp night, the city's lights blurred by mist, your mind awash with stories both spoken and unspoken. Algernon ruffles his feathers, seemingly satisfied with the night's adventure. You tuck away your notes and prepare for the final day of your scheduling odyssey, knowing that the stories you carry are as fluid and shifting as the Thames itself. You wake to the soft glow of a London morning, the city just beginning to stir beneath a pale sky. Today marks the final appointment of your long and winding journey through the world of Victorian séances, a private gathering in the home of a reclusive aristocrat, Lady Isabel Crane. Her estate lies on the outskirts of the city, surrounded by ancient oaks whose branches scratch the windows like eager fingers. The house smells of beeswax and old parchment, a sanctuary frozen in time. Lady Crane herself is a statuesque woman with silver-streaked hair and a voice that carries the weight of many unspoken secrets. Her reason for the séance is deeply personal: to reach her late husband, lost at sea during a storm months before. The medium, a quiet but steady presence named Lydia, sets the tone with gentle prayers and the soft ringing of a bell. The circle is small, intimate, just Lady Crane, Lydia, and yourself. The séance is hushed, almost fragile, as Lydia calls softly into the darkness. Moments pass, pregnant with expectation. Suddenly, a delicate scent of salt water and wild roses fills the room, drawing a tear from Lady Crane's eye. The candle flames flicker gently, as if a breeze has passed through. You note how scent has emerged again in this final gathering, a curious thread woven through so many sessions. Historians still argue whether such sensory details were spontaneous or carefully crafted. The moment stretches into silence before Lady Crane whispers her thanks, the room heavy with quiet grace. As you prepare to leave, she offers a rare smile, a moment of peace reclaimed. Walking back through the grounds, the morning mist curling like smoke around your feet, you feel the weight of all the stories you've collected, the hopes, the doubts, the yearning that binds them all. Algernon flutters beside you, a loyal companion on this peculiar voyage. You return to your flat, ready to close the ledger, but knowing the echoes of these lives and seances will linger long after the last candle is snuffed. Now, as the day wanes and your eyes grow heavy, imagine the flicker of candlelight dancing gently in the quiet corners of those long-ago rooms, the whispered names, the soft scents of lavender and rose, the faint chill in the air, all fading slowly, like a distant melody slipping into silence. Let the weight of those stories settle softly around you, a warm cloak of human longing and mystery. You've walked through foggy streets, listened to cautious calls across the veil, and felt the fragile hope that connects us all. Rest now in the gentle hush of night, knowing that some questions remain unanswered, and that's perfectly all right. Close your eyes, breathe deeply, and drift into dreams where past and present mingle like shadows on a wall. Sweet dreams, and until next time, may your own journey be calm and filled with quiet wonder. End of script. Sweet dreams.